out of difficulties grow miracles. The sweetest of all sounds is that of the voice of the woman we love. Poverty may be the mother of crime, but lack of good sense is the father. The first day one is a guest, the second a burden, and the third a pest. Two persons cannot long be friends if they cannot forgive each other's little failings. Logic is the technique by which we add conviction to truth. It is a sad thing when men have neither the wit to speak well nor the judgment to hold their tongues. At the beginning and at the end of love, the two lovers are embarrassed to find themselves alone. Children have neither a past nor a future. Thus they enjoy the present, which seldom happens to us. There are certain things in which mediocrity is not to be endured, such as poetry, music, painting, public speaking. A slave has but one master, an ambitious man has as many masters as there are people who may be useful in bettering his position. Avoid lawsuits beyond all things, they pervert your conscience, impair your health, and dissipate your property. Next to sounded judgment, diamonds and pearls are the rarest things in the world. One seeks to make the loved one entirely happy, or, if that cannot be, entirely wretched. If our life is unhappy it is painful to bear, if it is happy it is horrible to lose, so the one is pretty equal to the other. To be among people one loves, that's sufficient, to dream, to speak to them, to be silent among them, to think of indifferent things, but among them, everything is equal. Everything has been said, and we are more than 7,000 years of human thought too late. The pleasure we feel in criticizing robs us from being moved by very beautiful things. A man can keep another secret better than his own, a woman her own better than others. They that have lived a single day have lived an age. Grief at the absence of a loved one is happiness compared to life with a person one hates. Liberality consists less in giving a great deal than in gifts well timed. Children enjoy the present because they have neither a past nor a future. No man is so perfect, so necessary to his friends, as to give them no cause to miss him less. A pious man is one who would be an atheist if the king were. The exact contrary of what is generally believed is often the truth. The very impossibility in which I find myself to prove that God is not, discovers to me his existence. We can recognize the dawn and the decline of love by the uneasiness we feel when alone together. The regeneration of society is the regeneration of society by individual education. All of our unhappiness comes from our inability to be alone. Those who make the worst use of their time are the first to complain of its shortness. There are only 3 events in a man's life: birth, life, and death. He is not conscious of being born, he dies in pain, and he forgets. There is no road too long to the man who advances deliberately and without undue haste. There are no honors too distant to the man who prepares himself for them with patience. When a work lifts your spirits and inspires bold and noble thoughts in you, do not look for any other standard to judge by. The work is good, the product of a master craftsman. Love and friendship exclude each other. We must laugh before we are happy, for fear of dying without having laughed at all. All men's misfortunes spring from their hatred of being alone. Marriage, it seems, confines every man to his proper rank. It's motive alone which gives character to the actions of men. A position of eminence makes a great person greater and a small person less. The great gift of conversation lies less in displaying it ourselves than in drawing it out of others. He who leaves your company pleased with himself and his own cleverness is perfectly well pleased with you. A vain man finds it wise to speak good or ill of himself, a modest man does not talk of himself. I would not like to see a person who is sober, moderate, chaste and just say that there is no God. They would speak disinterestedly at least, but such a person is not to be found. He who tiptoes cannot stand, he who strides cannot walk. A mediocre mind thinks it writes divinely, a good mind thinks it writes reasonably. Between good sense and good taste there lies the difference between a cause and its effect. Time makes friendship stronger, but love weaker. It is boorish to live ungraciously, the giving is the hardest part. What does it cost to add a smile? The passion of hatred is so long-lived and so obstinate a malady that the surest sign of death in a sick person is their desire for reconciliation. When a book raises your spirit, and inspires you with noble and manly thoughts, seek for no other test of its excellence. It is good, and made by a good workman. Politeness makes one appear outwardly as they should be within. This great misfortune, to be incapable of solitude. We should keep silent about those in power. To speak well of them almost implies flattery. To speak ill of them while they are alive is dangerous, and when they are dead is cowardly. The opera is obviously the first draft of a fine spectacle. It suggests the idea of one. Men blush less for their crimes than for their weaknesses and vanity. One mark of a second-rate mind is to be always telling stories. The wise person often shuns society for fear of being bored. If some persons died, and others did not die, death would be a terrible affliction. There is not in the world so toilsome a trade as the pursuit of fame. Life concludes before you have so much as sketched your work. Two quite opposite qualities equally bias our minds, habits and novelty. It is fortunate to be of high birth, but it is no less so to be of such character that people do not care to know whether you are or are not. A man of the world must seem to be what he wishes to be thought. Making a book is a craft, like making a clock, it needs more than native wit to be an author. As favor and riches forsake man, we discover in him the foolishness they concealed, and which no one perceived before. Even the best intentioned of great men need a few scoundrels around them. There are some things you cannot ask an honest man to do. The court is like a palace of marble, it's composed of people very hard and very polished.